after I was around 14 years old, I started to get my own corners downtown Cleveland, and had experiences there. Had John D. Rockefeller come along one day and give me a dime, and Jack Dempsey, the great fighter, came there, walked by once, and said, "Hey, how you doing, kid?" You know, and fooled around with newspapers for quite a while. And then I got out of downtown and went up to the neighborhood where I was living in. It's called 105th and St. Clair. And I sold newspapers on the corner there. And then my brother Nate and I got paper routes, home delivery, and worked for a couple of years doing that. And then in the meantime, I got a job once with a printer delivering packages, and I always managed to make a few dollars here and there, even though it was very hard times.
So what did that money go towards?
Well, most of it I gave to my mother,
Uh-huh.
and whatever I had, I gave it to her. She would give me a nickel,
Uh-huh.
so I go buy a bag of candy or something like that. And in the meantime, my brother Lou was a performer on the RKO circuit. He was a harmonica player and a dancer. Taught me how to play the harmonica. So I started when I was about 10 years old, playing the harmonica. And I got to be pretty good at it. So when I was 18, my brother Lou formed a harmonica band. He asked me to join it. And I left high school. I was in the 11th grade. I left high school, joined the harmonica band. And things never went well. It was a depth of depression. There was no work around.
Oh.
And we had to make a living, so I had to work. And the way I worked at that time, I'd go down to the food terminal, and at first I rented a horse and wagon. I'd buy a load of fruit or vegetables, whatever I could find cheap enough to go out on the street and sell it, and I did. I used to make a couple dollars, $3, $4 every time I bought a load, but you couldn't get a load every day because sometimes the prices were too high, and there's all kind of different factors. But in the meantime, I kept up with the harmonica. I went out on myself. Then I teamed up with a kid dancer that played a xylophone. His name was Henry Rich. We called ourselves the Two Ragamuffins, and we rehearsed an act for 6 months. Then we went out and peddled our act to the booking agents, and we started to get work. Well, the most work we could get was in the burlesque circuit. At that time, burlesque had vaudeville, then they had burlesque. Well, we were in the vaudeville part. And we did pretty good there for a while, but it was the same old thing. You couldn't get much work. So I had to, in the meantime, go out huckstering, to make ends meet. And then Henry met up with a young lady, another dancer, and he figured that he could build up an act with her while they would get more work, and he did. And they did get much work. In fact, they were hitting some big shows. So I went out and I did a single. So I worked around town. I used to play nightclubs, and sometimes I get a convention or a senior group, or mostly clubs. And that's the way I made my living in the early days.
What was it like in school? Did you speak Yiddish at home at the time?
Yes, we spoke Yiddish. But outside of the house, we spoke English, of course.
Uh-huh.
But my mother and father spoke Yiddish, so we were able to talk to them. If you ask me now if I could talk Yiddish, well, I can say a few words. I don't remember too much about it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In school, were they mostly Jewish kids, or was it mixed?
When I went to school,
Yeah.
it was about 95% Jewish
Oh.
kids,
Mhm.
Glenville High School at that time.
Mhm.
And that was a good part of my life. I enjoyed going to high school.
Most of them from also speaking Yiddish and also from Eastern Europe.
Pardon?
Most of them also speaking Yiddish and also from Eastern Europe.
In the school, you
Yeah.
mean the kids?
Yeah.
All my friends, oh yes,
Oh.
oh yeah, sure.
Uh-huh.
A lot of them spoke Yiddish at home. I had a lot of friends, a lot of friends. We had a gang of guys who were terrific. And we never got into trouble. We were clean.
Mhm.
Played basketball, baseball, football, we were into sports. And used to have a real good time. And that was the early part of my life. Later on, I can't say too much about my life. It turned out very bad. And had some misfortunes. And I did some bad things that I should have never done. And I'll never forgive myself for what I done. But I hurt a lot of people, and I've never got over it.
You told me once that you had met, I think, Ben and Sadie.
Oh, Ben and Sadie, oh yeah, I used to see them every now and then. I saw them all the time, Ben and Sadie. And, excuse me, in fact, Ben, who was a sponsor, excuse me, was a sponsor for our club when we were 16, 17 years old, with the gang of guys I ran around with. We had the Jewish Community Center then, and we had clubs there. And there were a bunch of us guys all got together, and we formed our own club called the Vencemos, which meant in Spanish, we conquer.
Oh, right.
I'll never forget that.
Mhm.
Well, out of the old gang that I had, that I ran around with in them days, were 17, 18, 19 years old, I only got one left.
Mhm.
He's my age, and he lives in Lancaster, California.
Oh.
Of the whole gang that we had.
Mhm.
And our crowd, the Benthamo clubs, had about 16 members.
Mhm.
They're all gone, except Lenny Eisman. He's still alive,
Mhm.
but he's been sick lately too. So, we're both not too far away from the end of our lives because of on account of our age. But I take one day at a time.
So what were Ben and Sadie doing at that time?
Well, I think I got a cold yet. I'm sorry. Ben had a linotype business, and he used to make the linotypes for newspapers, neighborhood papers. A paper called the Shopping News. I think he did that too. That was his line of work. But I only saw Ben once in a while. I didn't see him too often. The most of the time I saw him was at the club because he was our sponsor. And then later in life, I bumped into him all the time, and every now and then. But he was a wonderful guy. He was a wonderful man. And Sadie was a wonderful lady. I always respected her. They were real good.
Are there any other relatives outside of your brothers and sister who you remember meeting when you were a child in
Oh,
Cleveland?
sure. Because Montel's children, Nate and Phil, we used to run around together once in a while. We'd see each other when I was very young, not when I got older.
Mhm.
Of course, after the war broke out, that separated everybody. Everybody went different ways, different directions after the war.
Yeah.
And I would see Maury Weltman once in a while. Maurice, that was Ben's brother.
Mhm.
And by that time, we weren't too close anymore. We all had our own problems.
I had heard that your father didn't talk much to his brothers and sister.
No, he was angry with them. And they were angry with my father. My father was non-religious, and they were very religious.
Right.
And when he condemned religion, they broke with him.
Hmm.
They don't want no part of it. And that's what separated the families.
But you were still friendly with the kids.
Yeah, well, at the time, sure, whenever I had a chance.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's so many different things that happened in those days. But like I say, today's a new world, a different world. It wasn't like when we were young kids.
And your father made a living as a tailor while you were a kid?
Well, if you call it a living,
Mm.
hardly made anything.
Mm.
The children, they're the ones that worked and brought the money into the house
Really?
so we could survive.
Oh.
It was a survival of the fittest at that time. But we all pitched in, did the best we could.
Mhm.
And we made it, we got through it.
And eventually, some of them moved to California.
Well, they all went to California. My brother Nate and I stayed behind. And my mother and father went to California. Frank went to California. Bill was already in California. My brother Lou was in California. My brother Harry stayed here. And, hey, like I said, we all had our own problems. And
They went just for the climate?
oh yes, yeah, they went to get away from the winters, from the bad. See, when you get older, your body can't take the cold anymore. I know it myself, because when it gets cold, I feel it right away. And I think everybody, when they get older,
Sure.
feels the same way. So if you can get away to the warm climate, that's where you go.
So was Lou able to make a living off of playing harmonica?
Well, he did for a while. He was on the big time. He was on the RKO circuit.
Mhm.
And then he pulled he pulled a boo-boo. He ran away and got married. Left the show, never notified him.
Mhm.
And you don't do that in show business. And they blackballed him.
Oh, he wasn't able to get back.
Never was able to get back.
Mm.
Not the right way.
Oh.
He did the same thing I did with Henry Rich.
Oh.
To do ragamuffins.
Mhm.
We bounced around from one place to the other for real low money. And finally, there wasn't enough work to call it a deal.
So what did he get into after that?
Who, me?
No, Lou. Yeah,
Lou?
Yeah, what did he get into after the
Well, he
harmonica?
used to huckster too.
Mm.
He used to huckster. Then he started selling cars.
Mhm.
He tried everything to make a few bucks.
How about Bill?
Bill went to California early also, and right after the war, he went there, and then my mother and father followed, and Frank. Then after Frank sold the deli that we had he sold out to my brother Harry in '65. He went to California, and then Harry had it for about a year, and the neighborhood changed, so he sold it to the guy that was working there, and that was it. What else would you like to know?
What did Bill live on in California?
Pardon?
What did Bill do for a living in California?
What is who?
What did Bill do for a living in
Oh,
California?
Bill.
Yeah.
Bill was in the concession business. He had a concession stand on the boardwalk
Oh.
in Santa Monica. And then after that, he had these little restaurants, it wasn't a restaurant where you come in and sit down and eat. It was a carry-out restaurants they have in California, like a stand in an amusement park. You know what they have in
Yeah.
an amusement park? So stands,
Uh-huh.
and that's the business he was in when he got sick.
And he did pretty well with that.
Yes, well, he made a living. Nobody got rich. Can't get rich from that. It was only a lunchtime thing. He used to be by a couple of factories, and workers run out to get their lunch and run back in. But Bill was a nice guy and a very intelligent guy. And it's too bad, he broke my heart when he died. Yeah.
And Harry ran the deli?
Well, Harry bought out Frank.
Yeah.
Then a year later, he gave up on it too,
Oh.
because the neighborhood was changing. He didn't want to take a chance of getting hurt. And the guy that he bought it from got held up a couple of times, and he didn't last long either.
Hmm.
He finally had to give it up.
So what else did Harry do?
He went into the vending machine business. You know, gumballs, peanuts. You know, he placed them in different stores. You know, he made a pretty good living with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How about Nate?
Nate-
Didn't he
Nate-
move to Florida at some point?
Well, Nate moved to Florida. After, quite a bit after the war. Maybe about 10, 15 years after the war, he moved to Florida. But Nate was a bookie, and when he was in Cleveland, he was a bookie, and he played the horses, and that was his life, that was his game, the horses. If he didn't book them, he was betting them. When he bet them, he lost. When he was booking, he was making a living. That's the name of the game. Yeah. So all in all, we've all had an eventful life. Anything else you want to know?
So, was there when have you? I know my father was drafted in the war.
Yeah. Yeah, he was drafted.
No one else was affected.
Well, Nate was drafted too,
Oh, he was.
but he didn't last long. He had something wrong with him, and they after he was there about 6 months, they let him out. They let him go.
Uh-huh.
And I was drafted, but I'd been in an accident when I was 19 years old, and I had a steel plate in my arm, and that got me out of the Army.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't take me for that. So I was seriously injured, but I survived it, but it saved me from going to war.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Things happen.
So, how long did your father continue with the tailor business?
Well, until he went to California.
Oh,
In 48, they went to California.
so he retired after that.
He retired, that was it.
Uh-huh.
And they went there, they got Social Security, and they were able to manage.
Do you remember anything that your parents told you about, why they decided to leave the old country?
Well, sure, I know I left the old country like most Jewish people did, especially in Russia, where the Cossacks will make what they call pogroms. They come into a Jewish village and start killing the Jewish people. And they saved their lives by a fluke. They hid in the basement when the Cossacks came into the house. And my brother Lou was a baby. And he started to cry. And my mother had a piece of sugar. What do you call it? A piece of rock sugar? What do you call it?
Rock candy? Or,
Well, it was regular sugar,
Yeah, okay.
but it came in little rocks, and she threw it in his mouth, and they quieted him. The Cossacks come in, and they didn't see anybody, and they left. If it wasn't for that, they'd have been dead. I wouldn't be here talking to you today.
Mhm.
Neither would you.
Right. So one thing I
That
thought
was a
about.
big reason
Yeah.
they ran here. Sure, all the Jewish people at that time were trying to get out of Russia and Poland and Ukraine. They were. And then, of course, after that, when they were all out, years later, Hitler came along and finished the job. That's what he did.
Do you know why they chose the United States to go to?
Well, his two brothers were here. He had family here. They're the ones that sponsored them.
Well, they sponsored them.
Somebody had to sponsor
I
him.
see. They dysfunction.
Sure. Well, at that time. Don't forget, you go back to 1912.
Right.
At that time, yes, they still were brothers.
So they broke up after he was here then.
Yeah, after he was here for a while,
Oh.
I guess I can remember going to a wedding when I was about 8 or 9 years old. And everybody was joyful. One of the nieces, my father's niece, got married. I think it was Muffle's daughter got married.
Hmm.
I remember that wedding.
Huh.
And they were still friends then. But I really don't know when they broke up.
Hmm.
It was soon after. A couple of years, 2, 3 years, 4 years after.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't speak to each other until Shia got sick and was dying. And my father went to see him.
Yeah. But my father mentioned that at one point, I think you all went to someplace on the East Coast. If it was New York, maybe to see relatives of your mother. Do you remember
Boston.
that? Is it Boston?
Yeah, my mother went to Boston to see her brother.
Mm-hmm.
She had a brother there.
Oh.
And they treated her wonderful, of course. And her brother was in he made quilts.
Mm-hmm.
He was a manufacturer of quilts. And he was pretty well to do. He had a good wholesale business going. He supplied quilts all the department stores. But he never, she came back and they kept in touch for a while. And then he died.
Oh.
And then the children just, his children never bothered.
Do you remember? You know when that might have been that she went to Boston?
I might have been 14 or 15 years
Oh, okay.
old.
You were pretty young.
Yeah.
Did you go with her, or did you?
No,
She just went alone.
She went alone. She went by herself.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to tell you stuff about my mother. She was a wonderful, wonderful mama. A real Yiddish mama. You couldn't get a better mother in your life than she was. She watched her children with a passion. She cooked, she baked, she scrubbed. She did everything. Worked like a horse. My father, he was bitter, but he was a good man. And he was very intelligent. Very intelligent. He knew the score. What was going on around him.
When you were a child, you must have been more than one person per room. I mean, it must have been pretty crowded where you were living, I would imagine.
Well, yeah. Well, we had to bunk together. I remember sleeping in the same bed with my brother Nate. You know, we had to double up.
Yeah.
The only one that had a private bed was my sister, Rose.
Yeah.
Sure. It was tough days, bad days.
Rose moved to California pretty early too, didn't she?
She went to California, I would say, about 5 years after she was married.
Oh. She got married in Cleveland and then moved.
Yeah, she got married in Cleveland. I don't remember when, but it was in the 30s sometime, late 30s.
Mm-hmm.
I guess right after the war she went to, they all went right after the war.
What was her training and what was her occupation?
She was a very brilliant young lady. She started from school. She started out as a court reporter.
Oh.
And she was a very, very smart girl. And then when she worked at that, and then after she got married, they moved to California. They opened up a collection agency. They were collectors. And they opened up an office, and they were very successful with it. They made a lot of money with it. She was a smoker,
Yeah.
and later in life she got hit with the cancer, lung cancer,
Mhm.
and heart attacks and all that. And she died comparatively young.
Yeah.
She was only 72 years old. But she was a beautiful girl, beautiful young lady. Now, if her husband's still alive, I don't know. Because he called us when she died, and after that, we never heard a word from him.
Okay.